Hi there. So today I thought I'd start by talking about birds in flight, and this would be part 1 of a part 2 sequence. So the first thing we would want to know when you're trying to draw the top part of a bird in flight, so as if you were looking down on the bird from above the bird, so it's kind of a flat view of the bird, is the first thing that we need to do is draw out kind of the length of the bird. Now I'm using a non-repro blue pencil. This is just enough to get you to see the kind of structure underneath. You would actually just use another 2 pencil or an H pencil in the graphite pencil. So let's go ahead and start. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of draw a rectangular box. Now this is going to be a bird of prey. So I want to make it kind of a bigger box. So because it's going to have a larger, longer wingspan. So if I draw this across, okay, now we have this nice box. All right, that's the first step. So the other step is to find the center of that box. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to do. You could measure it if you wanted to. I'm going to kind of eyeball it, but you do want to have symmetry in the bird. You want it to be equal on both sides. Otherwise it looks like you have a lopsided bird. So I'm going to say that, this is probably the middle right here. So I'm just going to draw a light line. Now the middle part, that's the center of the bird. So on the left and the right would represent where the body of the bird goes. So in this case, I want this to be kind of an eagle or a hawk. So we'll say a hawk. So what I'm going to do is just kind of draw a line right here. He's not that wide. He's pretty broad, but he's not as broad, say, as like a pelican would be a floating bird. Floating birds have much more wide bodies. So once we have that, now the next step is to find the center of this box. Now, a lot of times what you could do if you wanted to is you could draw an X on both sides, and now you kind of have an idea of where your center is at. So there's a center line there, and I'm drawing really, really lightly. I want to draw as light as possible because I don't really want these lines to be shown. So now that I've done that, it looks like this one might be a little short. That's okay. Let's just kind of stretch it out a little bit. So, okay. Now that we've done that, the next step you want to do is the front part of the wing would come out to about here. And then what you would do is from that corner right here, the center part, is you just kind of come down and stop right there. Now, as you can see, the distance from here and here should be equal on that side. So if looks like it's about like right there. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of from that center, just kind of bring it down here. All right, great. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is about right around here. This represents where the feathers will start to come down. And there's that center. So what you want to do is draw another line that goes just past that center area. We'll do the same thing over here. So, but remember, if there's the feathers kind of start to kind of slope down here, you want it to be in this just about the same position on the other side. So it's equal. All right. So once we have all that going, looks like this could get straightened out a little bit. And this is just sketching the bird. You'll see pretty quick this bird come to view. So I'm going to pull a line down. That represents the tail feathers. And then I'm going to draw a little line up. That would represent the head of the bird. Okay. And again, we're doing like a big hawk. So this is going to be a predator bird, which is much different than, say, a blue jay or something like that in their body structure. So once we have all that done, then I'm going to go ahead and use a regular pencil. When I say regular pencil, I'm using number 7 mechanical pencil, 7 millimeter right in there. So you can use whatever kind of pencil you want. I just happen to like this one because the tip is real small. So once we've done that, what I'm going to do is draw this out. And then I'm going to swoop down. Now the ends of the feathers will come outside that box a little bit. And then I'm going to start, remember how I said this little dot right here? That is basically where the feather direction changes and it starts to swoop down. Okay, and then after that, you can just do these little scallop type shapes. Okay, so basically all you have to do now is mirror that on the other side. So let's take this, go there, and then we'll bring this down. And about the length that you went out here, you'll do the same over here. And it doesn't have to be identical to the other side because the feathers will be in different positions, the ends of the feathers. So just kind of bring them in. And once I get to this corner part, I start to bring it in a little bit. and then I scallop it. Okay, all right. So now that we've gotten that far, you want to bring these lines down a little bit, and you want to show down here where the bulk of the feathers will end, and I'll show you what I mean. So now if I bring this out and this out, and what I'm going to do is do a main feather in the back that kind of comes out, flares out a little bit and curves. And the rest of the feathers, what I can do is this. Just kind of scallop that. Okay. Then we'll bring those in. There we are. Okay. So, and you can erase a little bit if you need to. So, all right. Now that we have that, now what we're going to do is focus on the head part. So on the head, we're going to say that this is the tip. So all you have to do is just kind of curve up, just kind of curve it around. So it's like a little dome, and it'll curve into the front of the wings, and then just kind of put a beak right there. All right. So now that we have that, now what we can do is down in here, we're going to show the body. Now the body part's going to be a little bit wider in the middle and taper down, because, you know, he's a broad back bird, lots of muscles in there. Okay. So now what we can do is you want to draw, these are called primary feathers. And then this area, these are called secondary feathers. Okay. The primary feathers are the ones that you usually see the feathery part. And so, that kind of are separated a little bit. So what we're going to do is the secondary feathers, they kind of stop right around here. And then what you have up in this area is they're called coverets. So those feather groups, all you have to do is just kind of draw a line. It kind of goes out and goes up. And then likewise right here, it just kind of goes over, and then it goes up. And then up in this area, you have secondary coverets that kind of go like that. Just draw them real light. Okay. Cool. Now, all you have to do is just kind of draw some little lines, kind of indicating the feathers. And what I like to do is just kind of put my pencil down and just kind of pull it forward like that. You don't have to draw all the way up. I mean, you could if you were doing this in a high detail drawing. This is just a quick sketch demo, so I'm just kind of giving a hint of the feathers. And I'm sure yours will look great. And remember, you can always pause this video and do step by step. It's a little bit easier, because then that way you're not trying to keep up with me when I'm talking. Now, what I would do is I'm going to draw a few more feathers back here, because they have so many different little feather groups. It's pretty amazing. All right. So actually, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that maybe that head's a little big for, like, say, a hawk. So let's bring that in a little bit, because their heads aren't quite as big. Like owls have these huge heads. Now that looks a little better. They have these hawks kind of have little smaller heads, so that looks a little bit better. So once we bring that in, then you can show more feathers in here. Draw some in there, just like the hint of feathers. All right, now this looks so boxy up here. He's really not that boxy. So let's curve this in and then come down a little bit. Again, we're going to go down and go up and then curve in. All right, so that's looking more like a big old bird, which is great. So that's one bird that we can do. And then you can add in these additional feathers down here. All you have to do is these little scallop shapes and kind of do some in here. They have lots of muscle groups back in here, so their feathers are going to kind of conform to that. And if you wanted to, you could do, like, you know, just some little groups of feathers in here if you wanted to go to that trouble. So there you go. And that's basically how to draw a bird from the top view. So the way that's real interesting is if you draw your box in different shapes, it'll end up reflecting like a different bird. So in other words, if I have a really long box, right? The longer the box, the longer the wingspan. So those are usually going to be your soaring birds. In this case, we'll look at a pelican. So if I were to try and find the center real quick in here, and again, if you wanted to measure this, you could. Pelicans have very broad bodies in the front. They're very big because they float. And so let's go ahead and do a line here and a line here. And the reason why we're doing those lines is this represents where that bone stops, and then like on the bird's wing, because it comes out and then it kind of branches down. All right. So now that we've drawn that, let's go ahead and we'll draw this. And then this long, now pelicans have got very long feathers, and so they come in. And I want to have nice symmetry, so I'm going to bring this out and then bring this down. Very long feathers. And then here's the scallops. Okay. Now in the back, they have kind of a short little tuft of tail feathers, and they kind of come out. It looks almost like a broom. And then there's the bulk of the feathers right here. And then they have these little feathers in the back. Okay, now the fun part on the pelican is that when you bring their shoulders, big shoulders, now their head's usually tucked back on their body. So you kind of, all you have to do is just draw this oval shape. And then in the front, they just have a long beak. And there's your pelican. So I'm going to kind of add some detail to the wings in here. If you wanted to, you could draw the scallops that kind of represent, we talked about, these are primary feathers, these are secondary feathers, and these are called coverts. Like cover, that's just all you think, they cover the other feathers, so they're coverts. And then if you wanted to, you could give a hint for the other coverts that are up here. There's primary, median, and second and lesser coverts. So we'll come over here. Come up, and we'll draw some hints of feathers in there. Now on these long feathers, we're going to bring them, they have those great long feathers. They're just so great, and they just soar around. I always say that if I could be an animal, I'd want to be a pelican, because they have the life. I mean, they live at the beach, they soar around, they're looking for fish all day. It's the great life, that's the life I would want. So, just to kind of hang out. So, and then they also have this neat little thing in the back too, which is kind of like this little tuft of feathers that comes off the back of their head. So their eyes would kind of be like right there. All right. So that's basically your pelican structure. Now, if I want to do a smaller bird, say like a blue jay, then what I would do is this. I would draw my feathers. Now, this is a smaller one. I'm not going to do it to scale. These are not to scale. Pelicans are much bigger, or maybe even the same size, or a little bit bigger. Yeah, they're definitely bigger than hawks. So, but what I'm going to do now is draw a smaller bird. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Kind of comes out. And bird structures are pretty much very, very similar to each other. It's just depending on the body of the bird and the width of it. In this case, we're going to find the middle, right about there. Okay, and again, we're going to kind of break this down. Now, with say like a blue jay, his body's not as wide as a pelican, so what we're going to do is just kind of bring this in. We're going to say that's going to be the bulk of the width of his body. Okay, so we do the same thing. His wings kind of come up, they hit here, and then they come down. Remember, we talked about finding a point here, here, and here. And they come down, and we'll flare those out. He's just in full flight. Okay. And then we can scallop it in. Same idea. So it goes up. So we want to make sure that the distance from here and here is about the same. So we bring that in. And then we can put the feathers in full flight. They're just kind of spread out, and then they start to scallop. All right. So once you've done all that, the difference really is that you can really see his head. So I'm going to draw like a diamond type shape. Okay. All right. A diamond with a little bitty beak on top, a little line on top. All right. Now, this is where the big difference is because these are soaring birds, there's their primary feathers right here. Here's their secondary feathers. These coverets are very broad, very muscular in here because they spend most of their time with their wings out. They don't flap as much. They do some major flapping and then they soar. So these stay out mostly. Whereas these guys, their bulk of their muscle groups are higher and tighter up at the top. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of show that coming up, and it goes out like that. and then make it symmetry, the same on both sides. So what we're going to do is just going to go like that. So this is their main muscle groups on these smaller birds because their muscles are all tightened. They don't soar as much. They flap their wings all the time. Okay. Now what you have is these are your primary wings right here. So we'll bring those out. Little lines kind of showing that. Okay. And then what you can do is they have their coverets up here. They come down and then they have more. Okay. And you don't have to draw all the, and if you were doing like a detailed long-term bird, then yeah, you would spend a lot of time referencing photos and colors and everything. But once you get these basic shapes down, I'm not looking at any pictures right now. I'm just kind of drawing based on shape. And I practice a lot to kind of get this down. But once you really start practicing a lot, use shapes, understand proportion, symmetry, and stuff like that. And then anatomy is so important because it gives you the opportunity to know, like you're familiar with what parts of this bird or anything you're drawing, if it's a living thing, what their anatomy is, how it's built. Once you do that, you can kind of escape from having to depend on using pictures so much. And they're great for reference, but, you know, it's great, more creative freedom that when you don't have to use pictures. So what I'm going to do is show the back end of where the tail feathers will be. I'm going to bring 2 lines up and then draw a line and then a line. And these feathers are really spread out. Then I'm going to draw this kind of a central feather in the back. And then just kind of scallop that out, bring that central feather up, and then just draw some lines. Okay, so, and you can erase it if it starts to get a little muddy. I'm going kind of quick because this is a quick sketch. Okay, and then what we want to do is kind of show the tuft of feathers back here, because they have all kinds of feathers. And if it helps, you can erase that central line and that central line. And then a blue jay, he's kind of got like a darker area back here. All right. So now that's your basic small bird. So as you can see, the difference is a larger bird, his wingspan could be even longer on this bird. But they have a very broad back up in here and it tapers down, definitely tapers down. They have a smaller head, very sharp beak, smaller head. Owls are different. Owls have a very giant head. And then they come out, and the biggest difference between soaring birds and predator, this isn't really a predator bird. I guess it could be in the sense that it catches fish, but soaring birds have got a huge area of coverets back here. So those coverets, these all they do is think of as a cover. They cover the other feathers, you know, all these feathers connect to the bone. So, anyway, so you have a big broad area right here, broad area right here. However, on smaller birds, they don't. They have their big muscle groups right in here. So, you know, just think when you're eating, if you ever eat chicken in a chicken wing, you know, you can see where the bulk of the muscle is at on there. So, there you go. So that's it for drawing birds. It's pretty simple. And don't get me wrong. It took a lot of practice for me to get to the point where I could just comfortably draw and sketch out some birds. If I was really taking my time, I would do it super detailed, but I do want to kind of give you an idea of how much practice went into it. It started with me just kind of sketching without really understanding. Here, I'll show you. Without me really understanding much, I just kind of started sketching them, based on some basic instruction. And then I went from there to really trying to understand bird anatomy. So I looked at the bone structures in here. I looked at how the feathers are grouped together. I studied the names of the feathers, and then I broke it down into basic shapes, like these are groups, these are groups, these are groups, these are groups. And then I got even more detailed and I said, okay, let me refine that. So here you have your primary feathers. Here's your secondary feathers. Here's your primary coverets. There's actually, it's almost like a little pinky feather that comes out of the top. Then you have like your greater secondary coverets right here. And in between, there's the median and the lesser. Now, you don't have to understand and learn all the vocabulary. You really don't. But it is important, I think, to kind of get an idea of where these structures are at so that when you're drawing, you can then really understand how they're broken down and it looks more like a bird. And then you get really creative. I did a pterodactyl. That's fun. So, and then I started practicing. So there's one. There's another one. You know, did some more. So I spent a lot of time practicing and, really trying to understand, what is about these birds that makes it look like a bird. So I hope this really helps. This is part 1 of the bird series in flight. Part 2 of the bird series in flight is going to show the bird not from the top view, but from like a 3/4 view. So you can see the bottom a little bit. You can see the top. You can see the angle of the wings. So it'll be really cool. So, this is part 1 of a part 2 birds in flight series. So, all right. Thanks a lot. And I hope that you had fun. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.